Watch and burn.
Hey everyone. So tonight I wanted to discuss Vangelis' absolutely brilliant record, Mask. This was coincidentally the first Vangelis record that I picked up back when I was a kid, and it actually set the bar pretty high for as far as me picking up the rest of his stuff. He had a lot to live up to, because I found that this record was, it had so many different elements going for it. It was heavy on the classical side. It had elements of opera tossed in. It had that traditional bombastic synthesized Vangelis sound locked in. And it all came together to sort of create this symphony of perfection that I thought would be hard to beat. And at this point, when I was a kid, I didn't really know who Vangelis was. So I figured maybe this was a one-off because that had happened to me with other records that I had bought. I'm like, oh, this record's amazing. And then I grabbed the person's second record and it wasn't very good. And this, of course, was not his first record. But nonetheless, when I bought this, I was like, okay, this is cool and everything, but if this is the only one, I'm glad I found it. And then I can't remember what, I think the second one I picked up was Direct. And Direct was even better than this record because I found Direct had more of like a pop influence and a pop shine to it, which I absolutely loved. And that record sounds so 80s. Well, so does this. This record sounds incredibly 80s too. But I think my favorite thing about this is that this is like, in a lot of ways, Vangelis' most classical sounding album. And the other thing that's kind of cool is this complements Soil Festivities, and Soil Festivities perfectly complements this record, because I've always felt that Soil Festivities was sort of the electronic warm-up for this more like traditional classical and opera-ish record. It's like Vangelis released Soil Festivities as sort of the demo for Mask, which in no way is knocking Soil Festivities. I love Soil Festivities, and in a lot of ways you could argue that without records like Soil Festivities, if I say Soil Festivities once more, it's going to lose all meaning. You could argue that people like Aphex Twin and like Square Pusher wouldn't have been able to do what they did without records like Soil Festivities. I have to stop saying it. Soil Festivities. Yeah, Festivities has no meaning anymore. Festivities, festivities, festivities. I'm not even sure if I'm pronouncing it right anymore. Festivities. Anyways, but with this record, I found that, like I said, this is like his most classical sounding album, at least up until this point. And I love that because with the vocal elements tossed in, with the heavy percussive elements, this record sounds like it could have been the soundtrack for like, well, any number of kind of movies, actually, now that I'm thinking about it. I was going to say I kept thinking of Peter Greenaway's The Belly of an Architect, even though I love Merton's score. I thought his Wim Merton's score for Belly of an Architect was absolutely perfect, and it fit the movie brilliantly. But at the same time, that movie does come to mind when I think about this record. And I'm not entirely sure why. Because this record is too upbeat for that movie, I think. That movie is a little more on the melancholy side of things. But nonetheless, I always think of these two, the Belly of an Architect and this movie being, this movie, the Belly of an Architect and this record being related somehow, and I'm not entirely sure why. But this record, I love it because the other thing I love about it is it sounds so 80s. It's actually kind of hard to explain, but this is sort of like the perfect sounding digital 1980s classical record, or the most perfect digital sounding 1980s classical record I've ever heard. And I have hunted down a number of those, but a lot of the times they fall under New Age, so they're difficult to find because nobody seems to have a lot of respect for New Age. Just like Vangelis, unfortunately, gets tossed into the New Age pile, and a lot of his stuff could vanish in there too. And I've been very fortunate enough to have that not happen to me, and me to be able to separate Vangelis from the New Age crowd, because I find that like it's almost like when people don't understand any kind of like new attempts at music, they always call it New Age or ambient, and then they just toss it aside like, oh yeah, that's ambient, to make themselves seem smart, but you know they're completely dumbfounded by whatever it was. So they're like, yeah, it's New Age, yeah, it's New Age. That's like that Enya, yeah, New Age. I know all about that. And it's like the term New Age makes them smarter or something, when it doesn't. It's just like New Age and ambient is sort of the dumping ground for music that people don't have the capacity to fully understand and interpret correctly and figure out how to enjoy. And this, unfortunately, would be one of those records. This record is not for everybody. And I love this record. This is the first Vangelis record I bought back when I was a kid, and I've loved it ever since. It's perfect. It has every symphonic element I want. The vocals are perfect. It's big. There's a, I don't know, there's like a heavy sense of sort of theatricality at play too with this record. I think that's a pretty good way of putting it. But seeing as how this is pushing 6 minutes, I have let this one run a little long, so I'm going to stop it here. So thank you so much for hanging out with me while I discussed Vangelis' 1985 album Mask. If you like this review, don't forget to do something nice for somebody, and I will talk to you guys soon. Have a good night. I just wanted to say thank you for making it through the entire video. I really appreciate it. And I'm going to remind everyone one more time, even though I've probably already done this in the video that you just watched, to please click the like button as well as the subscribe button because it helps this channel grow. And thank you for hitting like and subscribe, and we will see you guys really soon.